Seriously though, what on earth is going on with Ripuka's chest? I mean, what kind of jelly, dead or alive magic is going on here for it to be as bouncy as that? Anyway, welcome back to part 41 of Death End Request, where we're still pressing on through the pain area. We're on floor 3, which is... I mentioned last part that it's a little bit more gimmicky than the other ones. And what I meant by this is that there are more enemies on this floor that will counter specific things than previous floors. So you need to be prepared for that. But as I'm playing through, since I'll be talking about other stuff, if you find yourself struggling on a particular fight, just kind of watch what I'm doing. I think that's the only way to really put it. So I'm going to be talking about other stuff. So with the exception of maybe the boss fight at the end, if I have time, I'm not really going to be talking that much about other stuff. Today, or the next points that I would attempt to discuss and hope for the best can drag out the video is bonus videos for previous projects that I never got around to. If you've been following this channel for a long time, I have a very awful habit of planning to show absolutely everything for a lot of games and then sometimes not getting around to it. I've got better with it in recent years, like starting with around FF15 onwards. I've been doing pretty good at showing off everything, but I still want to kind of go through what I haven't done and what maybe intended to do at one point, and then for whatever reason why I haven't or why I might, just for the sake of discussion and for the sake of going down memory lane. Since I've been doing this since 2015, it's wild to think I've been doing this 5 years next year. It really doesn't feel like it. But anyway, firstly, the very first project I ever did for this channel with voice recording was Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, when I did that Virgil playthrough, where I mumbled into my really shitty, crap quality mic, because I had no confidence whatsoever, and I don't really have that much confidence nowadays. I guess I'm just better at talking to myself. But that project, when I did it, I had every intention of at some point returning to it. Which it won't be for any time soon. I don't want to return to it yet. Maybe for like the 5-year anniversary I'll return to it, like this time next year, but we'll see. To actually do the main campaign, to actually do the Dante Nero story. Because I do actually enjoy the story. I have problems with it, but I do enjoy the main game of 4 for what it is. And there's no denying how ridiculously, wildly fun Dante is once you get the grips of him. Even if I'm not that good at him, if you can get even half bearably decent, is pretty fun. The reason why I didn't do any bonus videos on Bloody Palace is because there's already enough Bloody Palace based videos on my channel, so I felt like it was very unnecessary. Like, even more so at the time when I was still playing DMC4 a hell of a lot. Next was Grand Theft Auto 3, which, like, at the time, it was when I was entering some of the worst parts of my life, because people who know me personally know I suffered depression for a very fucking long time, and to say I'm better now, I'm not necessarily better, I'm just better at acknowledging it, and so I can try and move forward with it, whilst before I was very ignorant to it, and it would end up being more trouble than it was worth. So when I was recording GTA 3, I was very much entering the worst of that, and it started to burn through more progressively as it went on, with it peaking during Uncharted 2, but I'll get to that when I get to that. But because of that, there was a hell of a lot of bonus things for GTA 3 I had every intention of doing. My original focus was to completely 100% the game, not just get all the hidden packages, but do every single stunt, do every single optional little mission, do all the optional races, do the mini events, get them to the right level to count them as completed, literally do absolutely everything for it and have it all recorded. And you could see evidence of that through that. I did all the packages, and there was a lot of points where I started an optional mission line and I went, oh, I'll show that off more later, and it never came round. But it was just because my desire to do so burnt out. I love GTA 3. GTA 3 is actually one of my favourite Grand Theft Auto games. I always have a soft spot for it, and so the only reason I wasn't prepared to 100% it again, despite the fact I've done it many times in my life, was just I couldn't make myself. That was just how it was. I just wasn't up for it. Next was Outlast, which I usually, without looking at my list, I completely forget I Let's Played, because that Let's Play started and finished the same month. It was extremely short. It really was, but I did have a lot of fun with that one. Like, that was the last one where I'd say I was really not confident in myself, but I still enjoyed it. Like, the first one where I kind of got a bit more confidence in myself and got a bit more rowdy with my emotions was The Evil Within. But Outlast, I did everything I wanted to do. I covered everything I wanted to do. So that one, for as far as I was concerned, it was the first truly complete, I've done everything I want to do with it project. And it's because at the time, keep in mind, when I did Outlast 1, Outlast 2 wasn't out yet. That's how long ago I've been doing this. But next was The Evil Within. The Evil Within, despite having the most recording hiccups I've ever had with a project to date, like seriously, if you go back through there's a lot of moments where things just got cut off or things just couldn't happen. And this was still before PlayStation allowed you to upload videos longer than half an hour. The limit nowadays is an hour, but before it used to be less than half an hour, which really conflicted with Evil Within and how I had to record and manage it. And so there was a lot of moments where it just became a pain in the ass to edit and manage around. That's why some of the videos were straight up 29 minutes 59 seconds, because I had to edit it down as much as I can to the very fucking second just so I could get away with it. But I never covered any of the free DLCs, and I had every intention of doing so when I had my money to buy the DLCs and do so. But ever since then, other things have always come up and I've just never come back to it. And then Evil Within 2 came out and I adored Evil Within 2. And when I tried to go back to 1 to try and get into the feel of it, it felt so horridly stiff and rigid that I really struggled to get any enjoyment out of it. So to be honest, I don't think I'll ever do the DLCs. I might discuss them if I ever cover Evil Within 2, because I'd like to, because of how much I enjoyed Evil Within 2. But like, I'm not, it's very unlikely I'll go back and cover the first game's DLC, because I don't think I'll be able to do it justice anymore, because I wouldn't enjoy it. Whilst when I first played Evil Within 1, I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was, despite its problems. But now there's a sequel that completely cleans up any and all problems. It's kind of just, But anyway, next was the first Uncharted game, Uncharted Drake's Fortune, which is another one that was kind of weird to record. And it was because it was halfway through the project was when that update that allowed PlayStation to upload videos up to an hour came out. And I really, really wanted to do something with that. Just for the sake of doing it, even if it was unnecessary. Which is why the finale was like 50 minutes long and it had no reason to be. I should have just split it into 2 videos. But I just really wanted to be able to say, look, I can do this now. This isn't a restriction anymore. And because it wasn't a restriction anymore, I felt more at ease covering what was, at the time, my favourite PS4 game before so much else that I ended up loving came out, and that being Bloodborne. I fucking love Bloodborne. Bloodborne's one of my favourite games this generation. It's not my favourite game this generation, and it's probably not even in my top 5 anymore because of some of the stuff that's come out more recently, just completely dogpiling it, in my mind at least. But it is absolutely legendary, and I adore it for what it is. And I'm glad that I got to show off everything with that, or everything I wanted to, with the exception of the Chalice dungeons. I wanted to leave that in a position of maybe one day I will go back and show them. But the Chalice dungeons are very repetitive and are quite the grind. And so I was very standoffish, and I still am if I ever would, because similar to covering the pain area now on this, I fear I'd run out of things to talk about very quickly because of how repetitive it is, and I'm very out of practice, so it would be a bit of a grind before I got there. So that's just another thing that unfortunately got left behind. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. If any of you watched this channel at the time, I apologise very regularly, and I will do so again, for how short that project was. It took me nearly 9 months, and it was just because I was at the absolute lowest of the low of my mental health. It was truly, like, not any kind of redeemable state, and I was in no mood to do anything. Almost every single part of that project wasn't me doing it because I wanted to, it was doing it because I was forcing myself to. Which is a grand shame, because Uncharted 2 is my favourite game in the series. I know that pisses off a lot of people because they think 4's the best, but no, I've never agreed with that. 4's got the best story, but it sure as shit hasn't got the best anything else. But because of that, the project just fell the fuck apart, and I just really didn't enjoy it, and I had all this leftover recording from like eons ago that just never got around to it. And then there was the fact that I had to record the entire game twice because my recording failed for a lot of the first run of the game, which really fucking sucked. And so I just had to do the whole game twice, which, already being in a really downer state, being like really unable to want to do anything kind of state, and then having to do something again because of something that was out of your hand, that project just, it was one of those things that I was about halfway through it and I knew for a fact this wasn't right. Like, I knew that I wasn't doing this right, it wasn't the way it should be. and I just needed to get through it. I needed to force myself to get through it and then take a break, which I did. It was only for about 3 or 4 months, but it was a necessary evil, because at least in my opinion, when I starting with Sonic Mania going onwards, I was doing a hell of a lot better. Yeah, it still wasn't perfect, and my upload schedule was still a bit sketchy, and I don't think it always will be. My upload schedule is kind of, if you've been on this channel a long while, it's a little bit infamous in its own little regard of how sloppy it can be. But Sonic Mania, I really felt a stride, and I thoroughly enjoyed what it is. I even had a live stream at the end of it, which was the first time I had in like forever. I just really enjoyed it and had an absolute blast with it. And it was exactly what I needed to try and pull me up a little bit and get myself together. I adore Sonic Mania. It was such a tribute to everything that made my childhood so special that it kind of doesn't make sense to me that I've yet to do Plus on this channel. So I will cover Plus eventually, but because it's just the same game again, just with Mighty and Ray, I was in no real rush. Like, yeah, Encore mode changes the level design a little bit here and there, but it doesn't change it enough for it to really be like a whole full playthrough. Or to do it as soon as I was going to, so eventually it was just decided to be left kind of thing. After that on my list was when I started Friday the 13th, which is not necessarily ever-ending project. I just enjoy Friday the 13th and I wanted an excuse to play it more, and so doing odd videos of it I thought would be quite a fun thing to do. I've been meaning to do more of it because the game is still being played, it's still alive despite all the contractual issues making it so it can't get new updates and DLC anymore. But it's still doing alright, it's got dedicated servers. There's still the odd glitches you find here and there, but I don't think it's ever going to escape that. But I enjoy it for what it is. Next was A Hat in Time. A Hat in Time, when I recorded it, I did record everything, but since then 2 DLCs have came out. Seal the Deal and that Kitty Cat Tokyo DLC, that name slips my mind. Problem is, both of them are currently PC exclusive, and they keep on saying it'll eventually come to console, but we've yet to hear any reason as to here or when, and I'm starting to think it's not going to happen. The closest we're going to get is that with the Switch release, since it came out far later, I think it's coming with Seal the Deal.
It's over.
But it just seems insane that A Hat in Time, as a whole, really feels like it was abandoned on console as soon as it came out. Like, first of all, it came out at half the frame rate for no good reason. It doesn't have a single one of the updates or anything that was part of the backing project for it, so you can't get the I forget what the game's called, like the Psychonauts. You can't get the hat that's like the Psychonauts reference. You can't get any of that shit. It's just such a like bizarrity. Yeah, I still love A Hat in Time. I adore A Hat in Time, and I'm more than happy I covered it. I just hope eventually Gears for Breakfast can do something about the console versions to help us catch up with the PC version, because right now it feels kind of stupid how it's being handled. And I know they have to pay a set amount of money to put updates and whatnot on consoles to the respective holder, but the game sold stupendously well, so I fear that is no longer an excuse.
Who should I aim for?
But if that ever does come out, then yes, I will cover Seal the Deal and the Tokyo DLC, but only when or if that ever comes around. Next was me starting 2 projects essentially at the same time. One to function as a background project, which in hindsight wasn't my smartest move, because it ended up taking a year to get through the whole project because of it, whilst the other was in the forefront, that being Final Fantasy 15 and Devil May Cry 1, not the shitty reboot. Final Fantasy 15, I'll talk about that first since I technically started that first. 15 was probably the most comfortable I've been with a project, because it was when I kind of realised that I preferred doing bigger projects. I had so much fun with Final Fantasy 15 in every sense of the word, even with some of the more awkward bits. Like I said, the DLCs I had to record separately and then manually edit in to make them fit in the timeline, or like certain events or bosses that I wasn't sure how I was going to show off, trying to work something out to get around it, etc, etc. Like, but I had an absolute blast. Yeah, there were a couple more bonus videos I could have done that I wanted to and had every intention of that I didn't, because there were specific side quests and hunts throughout the main adventure I wanted to show off but just never did. And it was more that by the time I got to the end I was starting to burn out a little bit, and I didn't want to keep on dragging it on, showing off more and more stuff, because I was like, well, if I'm starting to burn out a little bit, people watching it are going to start to get bored as well. So eventually it was like, no, I'll let it go, and I'll make episode Arden when it came out the following March, the last thing I do. Which ended up being exactly how I ended up handling. I got everything I wanted to show down. It was just a few of the smaller things I didn't get to show. But for all intents and purposes, Final Fantasy 15 was a completed project when I finished it, as far as I was concerned. The original DMC, the only reason why I tackled DMC 2 is because DMC 1 went by so fast. It was so much faster than I was actually expecting it to. I remember the game being just that little bit longer than it was, and then so when I finished recording it and looked at it, and I was like, oh my god, this is tiny.
Let's go.
But that being said, I had an absolute blast returning to the original DMC. Yeah, I missed a few collectibles, but for the sake of the purpose, I felt I was happy with what I did. DMC 2, to be honest, I regret recording that. I knew I was going to have to, because I wanted to cover it before I covered DMC 3 to show how much of an improvement it was. But not once during the project did I ever really enjoy it. And I felt like that went against the whole purpose of why I started this YouTube channel. I said, I don't do this for profit. There's no ads you get on this channel. I'm not like trying to tag in a Patreon or a PayPal or any of that bollocks. I just play games that I love and want to show people. That's all this channel's ever been about. DMC 2 I do not enjoy, and it went against the whole point of why I do this. It's literally just there because I wanted to cover it before I covered 3. That being said, like DMC 2 I'm glad I reached the end of, and I wanted to do one big bonus video covering the Bloody Palace, since it was technically the first game to do a Bloody Palace, and it just never happened. I also wanted to do a bonus video to show off Trish, since Trish was an unlockable character, and it just never happened. And I wish I could say I'll go back to it, but I have no desire to do so. I'm sorry, but them the breaks. I just have no desire to do so. DMC 2, I don't think I'll ever return to it, like, ever again in my life. Outside of, I don't know, doing it for charity, maybe one day. Next was a rather small indie game called Detention, based in Taiwan, which I really enjoyed playing through, and I wanted to show it, but when I was recording, I was a bit like, oh wow, this game doesn't really flow as well for Let's Playing as I hoped it would do. But I think, looking back through it all, that was the first project where I made a conscious effort to voice characters. Like, I can't remember off the top of my head if I tried to do a voice for the characters in A Hat in Time. I think that was the first time I actually, like, proper committed to trying to do character voices, which has become a bit of a mainstay ever since, for better or worse. But I enjoyed doing it, so it's not going anywhere. But I did cover everything I wanted to cover to Detention. It's not a big game, so there wasn't much to show. Like, it was only like 4 or 5 parts big, the actual project. I just kind of wish I could have said more about it. Like, there was more I wanted to say about it that I just couldn't really find a way to fit in. And nowadays I feel like it's unnecessary, because everything I want to say is kind of there. I just wish I could have elaborated on it a bit better, sort of thing. Afterwards was Celeste, which on a personal level was very important to me when you consider what I'd been through and what I've talked about earlier about going through the list of games I've covered. It was very important about it because of the main character being noticeably depressed and suffering from anxieties, but it being done realistically, not bullshit. There wasn't any bullshit arrogance that things like Hellblade had towards it. It was very genuine and very, like, heartfelt. And when I did the project, I did everything except the C-sides of the levels, because the C-side levels, I didn't want to record, to be honest, because I was just like, it's an unnecessary thing. Like, if you can do the B-sides, you can do the C-sides. They're harder, but they're far shorter. It just felt like something I didn't want to do, and maybe could come back to one day. But then, and I only found this out yesterday. I had no idea of it. I was just going through my list of games, happened to click on Celeste, and it said there was an update. They added a new chapter. They added a new level as a free DLC thing, like 18 months after the game came out. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a new thing. Then maybe it can add it as a bonus video. So technically, there is another bonus video I need to do, and I'll show it off and go through it, and it will be all fun and dandy. 4 hours later, I finally finished it with the certainty of this is an amazing DLC, extremely heartfelt. It genuinely made me cry with what it was covering and how it decided to handle its material. But some of those obstacles are bullshit. Like, not even the mountain would ask this of you. They were so, like, beyond any kind of reasonable expectation, and probably the biggest reason why I won't be covering it until I can be more consistent with it is because 2 specific rooms I straight up could not beat, and after half an hour straight of trying, I gave up and went on assist mode so I could skip it. And then when I entered the next room, turned off skip mode. The first one was like, there's this room that you go into where 5 locks appear, and there's like all this electric around the room, and you have to navigate around to turn off the electric, and then go to these 5 rooms where there's an individual obstacle where you grab these jellyfish things to glide over and do these specific footwork to try and get these keys. One of those rooms I just couldn't do. It was end of. It was just way too much. I just could not for the life of me do in any form of circumstance. And I think it was the one in the top left where there's like 2 like platforms that move up when you touch them, and you have to bounce in between them using the jellyfish. So you have to throw the jellyfish and then dash diagonal, grab it again, so you get the boost with the glide of the jellyfish, bounce off the side to restore your boost, and then rinse and repeat going up. The amount of like breaking your thumb you have to do to keep up with that, it was just infuriating. I wasn't prepared to do it anymore after how much my thumb was aching. Like, my thumb is red this morning because of how bad it got. It's just, I just couldn't do it. And the other one was one right near the end that was just, I think it was like the proper obstacle, and it was just because I really did feel it was straight up bullshitly handled, because there was no checkpoints and the obstacle was way too long. Way too long. You went through this extremely long corridor stretches of being thrown around by the bird and your shadow. Then you have to go vertical and go through all these things. Then you go around the cusp, and then you have to go all the way down it again. Then you have to go another long stretch just to get through it. I got about halfway through it on my best attempt, and I realised just how much of it was left, and I was like, I'm just not prepared to do this. It's not even like, because like the very last obstacle in the core seaside is stupidly long, but even then it still goes by quickly, like each attempt, so it never felt that bad. Like, I eventually worked my way through it and didn't think that much of it, but it's such a long slog of an obstacle, that last obstacle in chapter 9, I was just like, no, it's not happening, I'm sorry. But until I can either get more consistent with it, or at least get more consistent with other things, and if there's just 1 or 2 obstacles that I can at least show you what you're supposed to do, but then say, look, but I just can't do it, and then show an assist mode, then I'll do that. But it's the only level in all of the game that I've ever had to do anything in assist mode, because it was just that tough for me. And so that is something I need to technically go back and cover. Next was Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition. There's 2 bonus videos I need to do for that. Firstly is showing off Bloody Palace, and secondly is showing off Virgil.
What? I'll tear you apart.
Fucking hell, Sheena just died. I just heard Sheena go, what? In the corner, like in my back of my mind. And I was like, what the hell happened? I didn't realise she died. It threw me off. But I do need to show them both off at some times, because DMC3 Virgil is very different from DMC4 Virgil, but still very fun. They're both very precise in how they handle. Just 4 is ridiculously OP, and 3 is only somewhat OP. And Bloody Palace is Bloody Palace. I need to show off for what it is. Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, I regret the first part of both projects, because I am extremely passionate about about us being a Sonic fan, and extremely passionate about the series, and nothing winds me up more than the blind hate that the series gets thrown at it because of influences like IGN. IGN have an infamous bias against Sonic, and because they're such a popular or well-known reviewing brand, everyone just agrees with them without ever actually playing the games they're cursing out. Don't get me wrong, Sonic's had it rough. Sonic's had a very rough career in a lot of places, but nowhere near as rough as a lot of people would have you believe. He's had a hell of a lot more ups and downs. He really, really fucking has, and it always really gets under my skin. But in the first part of more so Sonic 1 than anything else, I kind of just I let myself get ahead of myself, kind of thing. I let it get a bit too much of me, and it turned into an entire rant the entire part. I chilled out in the later parts of it, but then Sonic 2 I kind of riled up in other things as well, because I think that was around the time the original teaser for the Sonic film with the really fucking atrocious design was shown off before it got redid by I want to say it was Tyson Hess that redid the new design. It might not be Tyson Hess, I'll have to double check, but it was a really well-known fan creator who got pulled in to make it and made it so much better now. Like, the new Sonic film is now something I'm looking forward to, when beforehand it was going to be something I would watch out of necessity. But both Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, it's just kind of like, I didn't handle it anywhere near what I did. I had a lot of leftover frustrations towards what was going on with the series that I just kind of let get a hold of me too much, and for that sake I kind of apologise to the people who watched that, because it was a bit much. But I go back and watch it and I kind of cringe at the first part a lot, because I'm just like, oh yeah, I was way too much here. I was really abrupt with my language, and I know I swear a lot anyway, and I always have. It's a part of my, it's just part of how I talk, it's part of my speech. It's just how I've always been. I always just drop swearing, because it doesn't mean, swearing means nothing to me. There's not a single swear word that I think has any value to me anymore. They're just words. But in Sonic 1 I still went so overboard that I feel like this is ridiculous. Like, I was really starting to get quite verbal towards it. Next was Mega Dimension Neptunia V2R, and that is one of my favourite projects I've done for this channel. I absolutely adored every second of Neptunia V2R, and I'd like to think it shows throughout the project. Yeah, I started to tire out in a few of the bonus videos, but as a whole, I was in hysteria every single minute of that. I had so much fun with every single second of it. The game itself is so fucking funny, yet so lovable. Everyone in the cast are characters that, because I've gone through the whole series, I've got a connection with, and I understand what they are, I understand how they work, and I love how they bounce between each other. It feels like every time I play a Neptunia game, it feels like returning to a bunch of old friends. It's such a blast. And so even going back through and recording it and then trying to do all the voices, because when you think there's a lot of characters in Neptunia, in Neptunia, the 4th Nep game, like there was a lot of different voices I had to do, and so trying to think up of one for everyone, and then actually getting to show off my Britishness with Vert, having to try and do a softer voice with Blan, making Noir and Nep pretty much sound the same and kind of talk like this and yada yada, and then trying to do a softer Nepgear because she's a really soft touch and really innocent and naive and caring, and then trying to do Uni, which is probably just butchered that because it's been a while, and then trying to do Rom's little voice and how she's really nervous about everything. I just really loved everything that I was doing with Neptunia. I absolutely had a blast with it, and I would like to think it shows also in the view count, because as a whole Neptunia actually did pretty well views wise. Like, I know I don't usually get many views per part, like more people come for some of the random shit I do and less the projects, but to the people who stick around the projects, you know I always appreciate you and always say my thanks for it. I love you guys, or girls, I always love you guys for it. But Mega Dimension Neptunia, it was probably the biggest growth in subscribers through that project, which I know isn't saying much because I'm only a little over 100, but it was still like, it was a growth. People enjoyed it, well, people seem to be enjoying it, and I had fun with it. You guys seem to be having fun with it. It was just a really amazing time, and I'm glad that I got to show it, because as soon as the very second I played it the first time, it was whilst I was still going through the Final Fantasy 15 Let's Play, but I kid you not, the very first time I played it, I was like, I gotta Let's Play this. It was such an immediate decision. Like, I was like less than an hour into it, and I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be the one. I've got to Let's Play it. I've got to play through it at some point. It's such a fucking fun and enjoyable ride. I've got to. And I've mentioned before, I'd absolutely adore to cover the rest of the series, but I don't know if they're ever going to get ported to current platforms. I've got them on Vita, and I know they're on PC, but I don't know if they're going to get ported to PS4 and Xbone. But they're not going to get ported to Xbone, let's be serious. But if they get ported to PS4 or maybe the Switch, but who knows. But I'd like to cover the original three, because although they're not as good, because I'm firmly believing that the series grows after each game, like it is a steady growth. Like the first game's pretty good, but the second game is better, minus the second half of the game being a bit near. The third game is even better than it. I just had a few problems with Neptune's personality, like she was a lot bitchier in the third game, and then the fourth game is just even better. Like, it's why I'm so excited for the possibility of a fifth mainline game someday, because they've proven to me they are continuing to grow. And if the reason why we're waiting so long for a fifth game is because they're spending more time and money working on it, go for it. I'd love to see it go really all out. Neptunia series deserves so much more recognition than it gets. But next was Hitman Blood Money, which, although it was a very short project, I'm glad I did it because I love Hitman Blood Money. It's what true Hitman should be to me.
Who should I aim for?
I don't mind Absolution as a stealth game, I just don't like it as a Hitman game. And I'm not a fan of either side of the reboot because bigger is not always better. The beauty of Blood Money's levels is, as you saw when I was running through them, none of them were actually that big. They were just cluttered with things to do. They were absolutely littered to the brim with so many little things and pieces that you could work with, that there were so many possibilities and options. I'd argue even more than you've got with the reboot nowadays, that it just made it extremely fun to experiment with. Added to that is that there was no like pre-scripted routines that they wanted you to do like in the reboot. The reboot has these paths in both the 2016 and Hitman 2,
All good.
and I just never agreed with the whole path system where it kind of sets you up to go down a specific route to kill these targets in these very specific way, just turning it into more of a puzzle game, which although there's always a puzzle element to it and I always appreciate that, I liked it felt more free in the older games. It felt more free to really do whatever the hell you wanted and try and make it work, allowing you to get away with some really cheeky shit sometimes and then still get the silent assassin. But I still am glad I showed it off because it was what it was.
Should I aim for?
And I hope one day they'll put actual Hitman 2, not the reboot Hitman 2, and contracts to PS4 like they did PS3 and 360. Or if the PS5 is backwards compatible and still has share play, I'll still play it through that then. But I would love to go through them as well because I love all the classics. Which brings us up to now, which is on Death End Request, which I'll save my thoughts to the end of that since we're near the end of the video anyway. And I've somehow managed to drag this off an entire part again, so I'm going to take that as, well, hey! But anyway, next time on Death End Request, we're on the 4th floor, so we're getting there, but until then, take care now.